The sound of the slap didn't just echo through the cramped diner. It tore the soul of the town right down the middle. One moment, 72-year-old Eta was reaching for a napkin. The next, she was on the linoleum floor, clutching her cheek while Sheriff Broady Tagot loomed over her like a storm cloud. He thought his badge made him a god. He thought the trembling old woman was nobody. But what if I told you that old woman's phone call, just 1 hour later, would bring a hellstorm raining down on his quiet county that no badge could ever stop? Stay with me because this story is about to get a whole lot darker before the light comes back. Welcome to Heartline Stories. The heat in Oak Haven, Georgia had a way of making people mean. But Sheriff Broady Tagot didn't need the humidity to be cruel. He wore his cruelty like he wore his badge, polished front and center, and daring anyone to say a word about it. It was 10:30 on a Tuesday morning at Sally's Skillet, the only diner in town that still served grits the way they were supposed to be made, slow, buttered, and heavy. The air smelled of bacon grease and old coffee. Eta Robinson sat in her usual booth in the back corner. At 72, Eta was a fixture of Oak Haven. She had taught half the town to read during her 40 years as a librarian, and she had fed the other half during church potlucks. She was small, her frame whittled down by time, with silver hair pulled back into a neat tight bun. Her hands, though arthritic, were steady as she lifted her cup of black coffee. "Morning, Mrs. Robinson," the waitress, a young girl named Jenny, said with a tired smile. Jenny looked nervous, her eyes darting toward the front door. "Can I get you a refill?" "Please, baby," Eta said softly. "And maybe a slice of that pecan pie if it's fresh." The bell above the door jingled aggressively. The atmosphere in the diner shifted instantly. It was like all the oxygen had been sucked out of the room. Sheriff Broady Tagot walked in, his heavy boots thudding against the floorboards. He was a large man, thick around the middle, but with arms like tree trunks. He had been the sheriff for 15 years, inheriting the position and the attitude from his father before him. Tagot didn't sit. He patrolled. He walked down the aisle of booths, tapping his nightstick against his thigh. Tap, tap, tap. He stopped at Ada's booth. Eta didn't look up. She kept her eyes on her coffee, blowing the steam away gently. "You're in my seat, Eta," Tagot said. His voice was a low, gravel rumble. There were 10 empty booths in the diner. This wasn't about a seat. "Morning, Sheriff," Eta said, her voice steady, though her heart hammered against her ribs. "I didn't realize this booth was reserved. There's no sign." "It's reserved because I'm standing here," Tagot sneered. He leaned down, placing both hands on the table, invading her personal space. "And I don't like the way you parked that rust bucket of a sedan outside. It's crooked. Looks like a hazard." "I parked between the lines, Sheriff, just like I always do." "Are you calling me a liar?" The diner went silent. Jenny, the waitress, froze with the coffee pot in her hand. The line cook stopped scraping the grill. Everyone knew what Tagot was doing. He was bored. He was angry at something else and he needed someone to break. "I'm just stating the facts, sir," Eta said, finally looking up. Her eyes were brown and deep, filled with a dignity that Tagot despised, because he couldn't take it from her. Tagot smirked. He reached out and tipped her coffee cup. It wasn't a violent shove, just a calculated nudge. The hot black liquid spilled over the rim, cascading onto the table and splashing onto Ada's lap. Eta gasped, jumping up as the scalding liquid soaked her dress. "Oh, Lord have mercy." "Clumsy," Tagot deadpanned. "Look at the mess you made. You expect Jenny to clean that up?" "You did that," Jenny blurted out from behind the counter, her fear momentarily eclipsed by outrage. Tagot whipped his head around, glaring at the girl until she shrank back. Then he turned back to Eta, who was frantically dabbing at her dress with a napkin. "Apologize," Tagot demanded. Eta paused. She looked at the sheriff, disbelief warring with pain. "You want me to apologize for you burning me?" "I want you to apologize for making a scene in my town," Tagot hissed. "And for looking at me like you're something special. You're nothing, Eta. Just an old woman taking up space." "I will not," Eta said, her voice rising. "I have lived here longer than you've been alive, Broady Tagot. I changed your diapers in the church nursery. I will not apologize to a bully." That was the word that did it. Bully. Tagot's face turned a shade of crimson. Without thinking, without hesitation, he swung his open hand. Crack! The sound was sickeningly loud. The force of the slap knocked her backward. She stumbled, her hip catching the edge of the booth, and she crumpled to the floor. Her glasses skittered across the tiles. Don't you ever talk back to the law, Tagot roared, pointing a finger at her prone form. Eta lay there stunned. Her cheek was already swelling, throbbing with a heat that matched the coffee stains on her dress. She tasted copper in her mouth. Tagot looked around the room, daring anyone to intervene. Two men in construction vests looked down at their plates. The line cook turned his back. Fear was the currency Tagot traded in, and business was good. Get her out of here, Tagot spat at Jenny. And if she parks crooked again, I'm towing that piece of junk. Tagot adjusted his belt, turned on his heel, and walked out of the diner, leaving a wake of silence and shame behind him. Jenny rushed to Ada's side, sobbing. Mrs. Robinson. Oh my God. Mrs. Robinson, are you okay? Eta let Jenny help her up. She was shaking, but not from tears. She picked up her glasses. One lens was cracked, a spiderweb of fractured glass. I'm fine, baby, she whispered, though her voice trembled. I'm fine. I'm calling the police. Wait. He is the police, Jenny cried, feeling helpless. I'll call the state troopers. I'll call someone. No, Eta said firmly. She dusted off her dress. She touched her cheek, wincing. You won't call anyone, Jenny. It won't do no good. It never does. Eta limped toward the door. She didn't go to the hospital. She didn't go to the mayor. She went to her car, sat in the driver's seat, and took a deep breath to steady her shaking hands. She reached into her purse and pulled out an old battered smartphone. She dialed a number she hadn't used in 6 months. It rang once, twice. Hello, a voice answered. It was deep, calm, and alert. Caleb. Ada's voice finally cracked, the tears spilling over. Mama. The tone on the other end shifted instantly from casual to sharp. Mama, what's wrong? Why are you crying? I had a little trouble at the diner, baby. Define trouble, Caleb said. His voice dropped an octave. It sounded dangerous. Sheriff Tagot, she whispered. He hit me, Caleb. He slapped me in front of everyone. There was a silence on the other end of the line. It wasn't an empty silence. It was a heavy, suffocating silence. It was the silence of a predator spotting prey. I'm coming home, Caleb said. Baby, you're in Germany. You can't just. Oh, I said I'm coming home. Mama, pack a bag. You aren't staying in that house alone tonight. The line went dead. Now here's where this story takes a turn you are not ready for. Because the man on the other end of that call wasn't just any son. And what he was about to do to Sheriff Tagot was going to make that slap look like nothing. Keep watching. 36 hours later, a black Ford F-150 with tinted windows rolled past the Welcome to Oak Haven sign. The truck didn't have local plates. It had Virginia plates. It moved through the town like a shark through shallow water, slow, purposeful. Behind the wheel sat Caleb Robinson. To the people of Oak Haven, Caleb was a memory. He had left town at 18, a skinny kid who was good at math and ran track. He had joined the Navy to pay for college, or so everyone thought. He rarely came back. When he did, he was polite, quiet, and kept to himself. He wore long sleeves even in the summer. But the man driving the truck wasn't the skinny kid anymore. At 34, Caleb was 6 feet 4 inches of corded muscle. He had a scar running through his left eyebrow and a tattoo on his forearm that was usually covered, a trident eagle anchor. He wasn't just Navy. Caleb Robinson was a Master Chief Special Warfare Operator. SEAL Team 6. He had spent the last decade hunting men who were far scarier, far smarter, and far better armed than Broady Tagot. He had operated in the valleys of Afghanistan, the coast of Somalia, and urban hellscapes in Syria. He had just finished a rotation training NATO allies in Stuttgart when his mother called. He had taken emergency leave, hopped AC-130 to Andrews Air Force Base, and rented the truck. He hadn't slept in 2 days. He didn't feel tired. He felt a cold, burning rage that sharpened his vision. He pulled up to his mother's small white clapboard house. The grass was neatly cut. He paid a local kid to do it, but the house looked fragile just like his mother. He walked inside. Mama. Eta was in the kitchen shelling peas. When she turned, Caleb felt the air leave his lungs. The bruise was purple and yellow, spreading from her cheekbone down to her jawline. Her lip was split. Caleb didn't say a word. He crossed the room in 2 strides and enveloped her in a hug. He was gentle, treating her like she was made of glass. "I told you not to come," Eta scolded him, though she squeezed him tight. "You have a job. Important work." "Nothing is more important than this," Caleb said, pulling back to look at her face. He traced the bruise with his thumb, his jaw muscles jumping. "Tagot. He was just in a mood, Caleb. You know how he is. He's the law around here." "No," Caleb said softly. "He's not the law. He's a criminal with a costume." Caleb walked to the window and looked out at the sleepy street. "Has he bothered you since?" "He drove by twice this morning slow, just watching." Caleb nodded. "Good. I want him to watch." "Caleb," Eta said, her voice filled with worry, "don't you go down there and start a fight. He has deputies. He has guns. You're just one man." Caleb turned to her. A small dark smile played on his lips. It wasn't a happy smile. "Mama, I'm not going to start a fight. I'm going to finish one. And I'm not just one man." He pulled his phone out. He opened an encrypted messaging app. There was a group chat titled simply, "Echo Platoon." He typed a single message. "Touchdown. Situation confirmed. Bad. Need eyes on." 3 seconds later, a reply came from a contact named Tex. "For hours. Bringing the toys." Another reply from Viper. "I'm in Atlanta. 2 hours out. I'll bring the legal." Caleb put the phone away. "I'm going into town to get some groceries." "Mama, you need milk." "Caleb. Just milk, Mama. I promise I won't lay a hand on him today." Caleb was telling the truth. He wasn't going to hit Tagot today. Violence was the last resort for an amateur. For a professional, information was the first weapon. He drove the truck to Main Street. He parked directly in front of the sheriff's station. He didn't go in. He just sat there, engine idling. Sheriff Tagot walked out of the station 5 minutes later, adjusting his sunglasses. He saw the black truck. He saw the stranger behind the wheel, staring at him. Tagot puffed out his chest and walked over. He tapped on the window. Caleb rolled it down slowly. "You lost, boy?" Tagot asked. He didn't recognize Caleb. It had been too long and Caleb had changed too much. "No, Sheriff. Just admiring the town," Caleb said. His voice was flat, devoid of accent, devoid of fear. "You got a reason to be parked in a police zone? Is this a police zone? I don't see a sign." Caleb repeated the words his mother had told him over the phone. Tagot's eyes narrowed behind his aviators. "You got a smart mouth. Step out of the vehicle." Caleb turned off the engine. He opened the door and stepped out. He kept unfolding, rising up until he towered over Tagot by 3 inches. Tagot had to crane his neck to look him in the eye. Tagot took a half step back, his hand instinctively dropping to his holster. "ID." Caleb reached into his back pocket slowly. He pulled out his wallet and handed over his military ID. Tagot looked at it. He squinted. "Navy, huh? What do you do?" "Peel potatoes." "Something like that," Caleb said. Tagot handed the ID back with a sneer. "Well, sailor, this isn't the high seas. This is my town. Move the truck or I tow it." "I'm moving," Caleb said. He leaned in slightly. "I just wanted to get a good look at you." "Why?" "So I don't forget the face," Caleb said. He got back in the truck and drove away. Tagot stood there, an uneasy feeling settling in his gut. He was used to fear. He was used to anger. But the way that stranger looked at him, it wasn't fear or anger. It was assessment. It was like a butcher looking at a side of beef, deciding where to make the first cut. Caleb drove to Sally's Skillet. He walked in. The diner was quiet. Jenny was wiping the counter. "Can I help you?" she asked. "I'm Ada's son," Caleb said. Jenny's eyes went wide. Oh, I'm so sorry. I tried to help her. I swear." "I know you did," Caleb said gently. "I need a favor, Jenny. Does this place have security cameras?" Jenny nodded. "Yeah, the owner, Mr. Henderson, put them in last month because people kept skipping out on the bill. But he's scared of Tagot. He won't give you the footage." Is the system connected to the internet? Caleb asked, glancing at a router blinking in the corner. I think so. Why? Caleb pulled a small USB drive from his pocket. I don't need Mr. Henderson to give it to me. I just need you to look the other way for 30 seconds while I plug this into the router. Jenny looked at the door. She looked at Caleb's intense eyes. She remembered the sound of the slap. She turned around and started washing a cup. I don't see anything. Caleb moved fast and silent. He plugged the drive into the router's USB port. His phone buzzed in his pocket. Link established. Thank you, Jenny, Caleb said. If Tagot comes in, act normal. But if he asks about me, tell him I'm just a concerned son. What are you going to do? Jenny whispered. I'm going to teach him a lesson about chain of command, Caleb said. As he walked out, he checked his phone. The video file was already downloading. He watched the thumbnail. It showed Tagot striking his mother. Caleb's grip on the phone tightened until the metal groaned. He forwarded the video to Viper. I have the assault. Dig into his finances. I want to know every dime he's stolen. I want to know about his deputies. I want to know where he sleeps. Viper. Copy that. The IRS and the FBI are going to be very interesting friends of ours. Give me 12 hours. The war had begun, and Sheriff Tagot didn't even know he was under siege. The sun was setting over Oak Haven, casting long bruised shadows across Eta Robinson's front lawn. Inside, the atmosphere had shifted from a home to a forward operating base. At 1800 hours, a dust-covered Jeep Wrangler pulled into the driveway. A man stepped out who looked less like a soldier and more like a Viking who had wandered into the 21st century. This was Tech's real name, Jackson Miller. He was the heavy weapons specialist for Caleb's team. He stood 6 feet 6 inches, with a beard that reached his chest and arms covered in tattoos of Norse mythology. He carried a large metallic pelican case in each hand as if they weighed nothing. 10 minutes later, a sleek, nondescript silver sedan parked silently behind the Jeep. Out stepped Viper, real name Simon Wells. He was slight, wiry, and wore wire-rimmed glasses. He looked like an accountant. But he was the most dangerous man in the unit. He was an intelligence specialist and a sniper who could hit a target from a mile away, while simultaneously hacking their bank account. Caleb met them on the porch. There were no salutes, just firm handshakes and grim nods. She inside? Tex asked, his voice a low rumble. Yeah, she's making cornbread, Caleb said. Good. I'm starving, Tex said, pushing past Caleb. Inside, Eta was overwhelmed. She had expected Caleb's friends to be scary military men. Instead, she found herself being treated like royalty. Tex insisted on fixing the leaking sink in the kitchen before he would even sit down, and Viper immediately swept the house for bugs, electronic ones, before setting up a bank of monitors on her dining room table. Ma'am, Viper said, his voice polite and soft. I need to ask for permission to access the county's electrical grid and the sheriff's department internal server. Technically, it's illegal. Eta wiped her hands on her apron. She looked at the bruise on her face in the hallway mirror. Simon, honey, if you can stop that man from hurting anyone else, you have my permission to do whatever the Lord allows. Copy that, Viper said. His fingers began to fly across his keyboard. By midnight, the team had a full tactical picture of Oak Haven. Viper had tapped into the town's traffic cameras, the sheriff's radio frequency, and even the unsecured Wi-Fi of the sheriff's station. Here's the situation, Viper said, spinning a monitor around so Caleb and Tex could see. Sheriff Broady Tagot isn't just a bully. He's a kingpin. On the screen were spreadsheets and photos. He's running a civil forfeiture scam on an industrial scale. He pulls over out-of-state cars, mostly minorities or students, claims he smells drugs, and seizes their cash and vehicles. The cars go to a chop shop 3 miles out of town, owned by his cousin. The cash goes into a slush fund labeled Department Training, which is then funneled into Tagot's personal offshore accounts. How much? Caleb asked, his eyes cold. Over the last 10 years for $1 million, Viper said. Tex whistled. That's a lot of grits. There's more, Viper continued. He has 3 deputies who are in on it. Deputy Griggs, Deputy Miller, and Deputy Stone. The rest of the force are just scared kids or old men waiting for a pension. Tagot keeps them in line with blackmail. So we cut the head off the snake, Caleb said. Not yet, Viper cautioned. If we just take him out or expose him now, he might wiggle out. He's got friends in the state capital. We need to catch him in the act of a felony, so undeniable that even his connections can't save him. We need to make him desperate. Suddenly, the lights in the house flickered. He's here, Caleb said. He didn't need to look out the window. He could feel it. Outside, a spotlight cut through the darkness, illuminating the front of Ada's house. It was a sheriff's cruiser. The siren blipped once, a sound of intimidation. Caleb stood up. Stay inside, he ordered the team. I don't want him to know the cavalry is here yet. Caleb walked out onto the porch, his hands empty, his posture relaxed. Sheriff Tagot was leaning against his cruiser, a cigar in his mouth. Two deputies stood behind him, hands resting on their holstered weapons. Evening, sailor, Tagot called out. Late night for a family reunion. It's a free country, Sheriff, Caleb said, leaning against the porch railing. Is it? Tagot laughed. See, I ran your plates. Rental? I don't like rentals in my neighborhood. They bring trouble. The only trouble here is the one standing on my sidewalk, Caleb replied. Tagot's smile vanished. He took a drag of his cigar and threw the butt onto Ada's pristine lawn. He crushed it with his boot. You think because you did a few push-ups in boot camp you're tough. I run this town. Your mama learned her lesson at the diner. Maybe you need to learn yours, Caleb said. The temperature on the porch seemed to drop 10 degrees. You touched my mother. That was your last mistake. Tagot signaled his deputies. They stepped forward, unbuttoning the straps on their holsters. Are you threatening a law enforcement officer? No, Caleb said. I'm giving you a weather forecast. A storm is coming, Broady. Pack an umbrella. Tagot stared at him for a long moment, trying to find fear in Caleb's eyes. He found none. He found an abyss. It unsettled him. Watch your back, boy, Tagot spat. We have a strict curfew for troublemakers. Tagot got back in his cruiser. As he drove away, Caleb looked down at the crushed cigar on the lawn. He picked it up. He walked back inside. Tex was cleaning a massive combat knife. Viper was typing. He threw trash on the lawn, Caleb said. Rude, Tex grunted. Viper, Caleb said. Start the psychological operations. I want him to think he's losing his mind. Viper smiled, the blue light of the screen reflecting in his glasses. Initiating Phase 1. The haunting. The unraveling of Sheriff Broady Tagot began at 0800 the next morning. Tagot walked into Sally's skillet for his usual breakfast. He expected the usual hush of fear. Instead he heard giggling. He frowned and walked to the counter. Jenny was there, looking nervous but suppressing a smile. The construction workers in the corner were whispering and glancing at him. What's so funny? Tagot barked. Nothing, Sheriff, Jenny said quickly. Tagot went to the bathroom to wash his face. He looked in the mirror. He froze. Written on his forehead in bright pink permanent marker was the word bully. He gasped and scrubbed at it, but it wouldn't come off. How? When he had slept alone. His house was locked. He had an alarm system. He stormed out of the diner, covering his forehead with his hat. He got into his cruiser and turned the key. Instead of the engine roaring to life, the car's speakers blasted. I'm a little teapot at maximum volume. He frantically mashed the buttons, but the volume wouldn't go down. The nursery rhyme echoed through the town square. People stopped on the sidewalks staring. Tagot roared in frustration and slammed his hands on the steering wheel. His phone buzzed. A text message from an unknown number. Reviewing your bank statements, Broody. You spend a lot of money on custom cowboy boots for a man on a civil servant's salary. Tagot went cold. He looked around wildly. Who are you? He screamed at the empty air. Back at Ada's house, Viper sat with a headset on, sipping tea. Target is agitated, he said. Good, Caleb said. He was in the backyard chopping wood with a rhythmic, terrifying intensity. Turn up the heat. Over the next 2 days, Tagot's life became a waking nightmare. Files from his office went missing, only to reappear in his refrigerator at home. His deputies reported that their radios would cut out and play recordings of Tagot's own voice, making racist jokes, Recordings Viper had spliced together from hidden bugs in the station. Paranoia began to eat Tagot alive. He called a meeting with his 3 corrupt deputies, Griggs, Miller, and Stone. "It's the sailor," Tagot hissed. His eyes were bloodshot. He hadn't slept. "He's doing this? How, boss?" Griggs asked. "He hasn't left his mama's house. We've had a tail on him 24/7. He just sits on the porch reading books." "He's got help." Tagot slammed his fist on the desk. "He's got to. I want a warrant. I want to kick that door down." "On what grounds?" Deputy Stone asked. "He hasn't broken any laws." "Then make him break one," Tagot screamed. "Plant it. I don't care. Put a kilo of coke in that old woman's garden shed. Do it tonight. We raid at dawn. I want him in cuffs, and I want that woman out of this town." The deputies nodded and left. In the ceiling vent above Tagot's desk, a tiny microphone picked up every word. At the safe house, Caleb stopped chopping wood. He listened to the live feed Viper played. "They're coming," Caleb said softly. "Planting drugs." Tex shook his head. "Amateurs. That's the oldest trick in the book." "We let them plant it?" Tex asked. "No," Caleb said. "We let them think they planted it. Then we show the town who the real criminals are." That night, under the cover of a moonless sky, Deputy Griggs crept into Ada's backyard. He carried a black duffel bag. He was sweating. He felt like he was being watched. He quickly shoved the bag under a tarp in the garden shed and ran back to his patrol car. High up in the oak tree overlooking the yard, Caleb watched through thermal goggles. He was dressed in black tactical gear, blending perfectly with the bark. He recorded the entire thing in 4K resolution. Once Griggs was gone, Caleb dropped from the tree. He retrieved the bag. He opened it. Pure white powder. "Tex," Caleb whispered into his comms. "Go. Package secured. Swap it." Tex emerged from the shadows with an identical black duffel bag. But this one wasn't filled with drugs. It was filled with powdered sugar and a very special surprise, rigged by Viper. A dye pack similar to what banks use, but modified to release a cloud of glitter and blue paint. They placed the decoy bag under the tarp. "You think Tagot likes glitter?" Tex grinned in the dark. "He's about to love it," Caleb said. "Tomorrow is Sunday. The whole town will be watching." The stage was set. Tagot thought he was springing a trap. He didn't realize he was stepping onto a landmine. Sunday morning in Oak Haven was sacred. The streets were usually empty as everyone was in church. But this Sunday the air buzzed with tension. Word had spread, fueled by anonymous tips sent by Viper to the town gossip network, that something big was going down at Mrs. Robinson's house. At 9 o'clock, a convoy of 4 sheriff's vehicles screeched to a halt in front of Ada's home. Tagot jumped out wearing a tactical vest that was 2 sizes too small for him. He carried an assault rifle, looking ridiculous and dangerous at the same time. "Come out!" Tagot screamed through a megaphone. "Federal drug warrant. Come out with your hands up." Neighbors began to pour out of their houses. They stood on their porches, fearful and confused. The front door of Ada's house opened slowly. Ada walked out first. She wore her Sunday best, a floral dress and a matching hat. She held her Bible. She looked regal. Behind her walked Caleb. He wore jeans and a plain t-shirt. He looked bored. "What is the meaning of this, Sheriff?" Ada asked, her voice projecting clearly. "Don't play dumb with me, Ada," Tagot shouted, playing to the crowd. "We have intel that your son is running a distribution ring out of this property. You're harboring a criminal." "That's a lie," Jenny shouted from the crowd of onlookers. "Quiet." Tagot aimed his rifle vaguely at the crowd, silencing them. Deputies searched the shed. Griggs and Stone ran to the shed. They pretended to rummage for a few seconds before Griggs emerged, holding the black duffel bag triumphantly. "Got it, Sheriff," Griggs yelled. "Kilo of product, right where the informant said." The crowd gasped. Ada looked at Caleb. Caleb just crossed his arms. Tagot smirked. The color was returning to his face. He had one. He had the evidence. Well, well, well. Looks like the Navy taught you how to smuggle, sailor. Cuff them both. Even the old lady. As Griggs marched forward with the bag, Caleb spoke up. His voice was loud, commanding. Sheriff, before you open that bag, I suggest you check the chain of custody. Shut up, Tagot sneered. He grabbed the bag from Griggs. He wanted to show the town. He wanted to be the hero. This is pure cocaine, folks, poisoning our children. Tagot unzipped the bag. He expected to see bricks of drugs wrapped in plastic. Instead, he heard a click. Poof! A massive explosion of blue smoke, silver glitter, and powdered sugar erupted from the bag. It blasted directly into Tagot's face, coating him, Griggs, and the front of the cruiser in a sticky, sparkly blue mess. Tagot coughed, blinded, wiping his eyes. He looked like a blue smurf. The crowd went silent for a second, and then someone laughed. Then another. Soon the whole street was roaring with laughter. What is this? Tagot screamed, spitting out sugar. That, Caleb said, stepping forward, is powdered sugar. I prefer it on French toast myself. You switched it, Tagot shrieked. Arrest him. He tampered with evidence. Actually, a voice boomed from the roof of Ada's house. Everyone looked up. Viper was standing on the roof, holding a large laptop connected to a projector he had rigged up the night before. He projected an image onto the white siding of the house. It was the video from the previous night. The video of Deputy Griggs sneaking into the yard and planting the original bag. This is Deputy Griggs at 0200 hours this morning. Viper narrated over a PA system. Planting narcotics on the property of a private citizen. The crowd gasped again. The laughter died. This was serious. And this? Viper clicked a button. The video changed. It was the footage from the diner. The slap. The sound echoed through the street. Crack. This is your sheriff assaulting a 72-year-old woman because she spilled coffee. The mood in the street shifted violently. The townfolk weren't laughing anymore. They were angry. They began to move forward. A wall of people closing in on the police cars. Turn it off, Tagot screamed, waving his gun. This is fake. It's AI. It's a trick. It's over, Tagot, Caleb said. He walked down the porch steps. You're done. Tagot, panic overtaking his logic, leveled his rifle at Caleb. Back off. I'll shoot. I swear I'll shoot. Drop the weapon, Sheriff, Caleb commanded. No. Tagot's finger tightened on the trigger. He was cornered. A cornered rat bites. Caleb saw the muscle twitch in Tagot's forearm. Text now, Caleb yelled. From the bushes to the right, a massive figure surged out. It was Texas. He didn't have a gun. He held a high-pressure fire hose connected to the hydrant he had tapped into earlier. Whoosh! A jet of water, hitting with 100 psi, slammed into Tagot. It lifted the sheriff off his feet and threw him backward against his cruiser. The rifle flew out of his hands, skittering across the pavement. Tagot crumpled to the ground, wet, blue, and gasping for air. Deputies Griggs and Stone reached for their pistols, but red laser dots appeared on their chests. I wouldn't, Viper's voice echoed from the roof. I can shoot the buttons off your shirt from here. The deputies froze. They looked at the angry crowd. They looked at the lasers. They slowly raised their hands. Caleb walked over to Tagot, who was trying to crawl away. Caleb placed a boot on Tagot's chest, pinning him down. You like hitting old ladies, Broady? Caleb asked softly. You like planting drugs? Screw you, Tagot wheezed. I'm the sheriff. You can't touch me. You're not the sheriff anymore, Caleb said. He reached down and ripped the badge off Tagot's wet, glittery shirt. And we aren't the ones arresting you. Sirens wailed in the distance. Not police sirens. Black SUVs. That would be the FBI, Caleb said. My friend Viper sent them a very interesting portfolio of your offshore accounts this morning, along with the location of your cousin's chop shop. Tagot went limp. He looked up at the sky, realizing that his reign of terror was over. He had been taken down by a granny, a librarian, and a son who loved her enough to bring a war home. But the drama wasn't quite over. As the FBI pulled up, Deputy Miller, the third corrupt deputy who had been hiding in the back, panicked. He saw an opening. He grabbed Ada, pulling her in front of him as a human shield, pressing a gun to her temple. Back off. Miller screamed. Let us go or she dies. The crowd screamed. Caleb froze. He had made a mistake. He had let one of the rats get too close to his mother. Caleb's eyes met Ada's. She was terrified, trembling. "Don't do it, Miller," Caleb said, his voice dropping to a terrifying calm. "Let her go." "Get me a car," Miller yelled, dragging Eta backward. Caleb looked at Viper on the roof. Viper shook his head slightly. He didn't have the shot. Eta was blocking the target. Caleb looked at Texas. Tex was too far away. It was up to Caleb. And he was 30 feet away. The world seemed to narrow down to the 3 inches of space between the barrel of Deputy Miller's service pistol and Eta Robinson's temple. The humid Georgia air was thick with silence, broken only by the distant approaching sirens of the FBI convoy, and Miller's jagged, panicked breathing. 30 feet. That was the distance Caleb had to close. In the world of special operations, 30 feet was a marathon. It was an eternity. A trigger pull took 0.2 seconds. Covering 30 feet took 3. The math didn't work. If Caleb moved, Eta died. "Miller." Caleb's voice cut through the tension, not with a scream, but with a terrifyingly grounded baritone. He held his hands out, palms open, showing he was unarmed. "Look at me. Don't look at the crowd. Look at me." Miller's eyes darted wildly. He was young, barely 25. A kid who had joined the force because he wanted to drive fast cars and feel important. He wasn't a killer. But fear made men do irrational things. "Stay back. I swear to God I'll do it. I'm not going to jail for Tagot." "You're already in deep, Miller," Caleb said, taking a microscopic step forward. "But right now, you're looking at obstruction and assault. You pull that trigger, that's capital murder. That's the needle. Or worse, you have to deal with me." Miller's hand was trembling so violently that the gun barrel tapped rhythmically against Ada's skin. Eta squeezed her eyes shut, clutching her Bible against her chest. She could feel the cold steel. She could smell the sour sweat of the boy holding her. "I need a car," Miller screamed, his voice cracking. "I want the truck. The black truck. Throw me the keys." "Okay," Caleb said soothingly. "Okay. The keys are in my pocket. I'm going to reach for them slowly." Caleb moved his hand to his pocket. His eyes locked onto Miller's trigger finger. It was white-knuckled. "Mama," Caleb said, his voice shifting to a gentle tone he hadn't used since he was a child. "Do you remember what you told me when I was bullied in the 3rd grade? When that boy Tommy had me in a headlock?" Ada's eyes snapped open. She remembered. She was a librarian, a woman of words, but she had raised a black son in the South. She had taught him survival. "If you can't move your hands, baby," she had told him, "you use your feet and you stomp like you're crushing a snake." Eta didn't nod. She didn't signal. She just shifted her weight. "Here are the keys," Caleb said, pulling his hand out. He tossed the keys not at Miller but high into the air to the left. Miller's eyes instinctively tracked the glint of silver arcing through the sunlight. For a split second his focus broke. "Now, Mama!" Caleb roared. Eta Robinson, 72 years old, drove the heel of her sensible Sunday pump down onto the arch of Deputy Miller's foot with every ounce of strength she possessed. Miller howled in pain, his reflex forcing him to jerk his foot back. His balance wavered. The gun barrel slipped from Ada's temple. That was all Caleb needed. He didn't run. He exploded. He covered the 30 feet in a blur of motion that the human eye struggled to track. Before Miller could recover, Caleb was there. Caleb's left hand chopped down on Miller's wrist, snapping the radius bone with a sickening crack. The gun flew loose. Caleb's right hand grabbed Miller by the throat, lifting him off the ground and slamming him into the dirt with the force of a pile driver. Miller gasped, the air leaving his lungs. His fight instantly extinguished. Caleb stood over him, his fist cocked back, ready to deliver a blow that would end Miller's life. The rage that had been building since the phone call in Germany, since the spilled coffee, since the moment he saw his mother's bruise, surged through him like molten lead. "Caleb!" "No!" Ada's voice pierced the red haze. She was standing there, shaking, adjusting her hat. "He's just a boy, Caleb. Don't you kill him. You've done enough." Caleb froze. He looked at his mother. He looked at the whimpering deputy beneath him. He slowly unclenched his fist. "You're lucky she's a saint," Caleb whispered to Miller. "Because I'm not." At that moment, the street was flooded with black SUVs. Doors flew open and armored agents poured out, weapons drawn. The letters FBI were emblazoned on their jackets in bold yellow. Leading them was a tall man with gray hair and a weary face. Special Agent Robert Henderson, the head of the Atlanta field office. Viper had called in a favor from an old operation to get Henderson here personally. Federal agents, Henderson announced. Nobody move. But the situation was already under control. Tex was still holding the fire hose, grinning. Viper was on the roof recording everything. Tagot was a blue, glittery lump against his cruiser. And Caleb was helping his mother smooth out her dress. Agent Henderson walked up to Tagot. He looked down at the disgraced sheriff, covered in sugar and shame. "Broady Tagot," Henderson said, reading from a tablet. "You are under arrest for racketeering, money laundering, conspiracy to distribute narcotics, deprivation of civil rights under color of law, and assault. You have the right to remain silent, though looking at you, I doubt you'll be able to keep your mouth shut." Tagot spat out a mouthful of blue sludge. "This is a setup. That soldier, he's a terrorist. He attacked me." "We have the video, Mr. Tagot," Henderson said dryly. "We have the bank records. We have the testimony of your cousin at the chop shop. He flipped on you about 10 minutes ago to save his own skin." As agents hauled Tagot to his feet, the town of Oak Haven did something unexpected. They started clapping. It started with Jenny the waitress, then the construction workers, then the neighbors. Soon the entire street was erupting in applause and cheers. It wasn't just for the show. It was the sound of a heavy blanket of fear being lifted off the town. Caleb put his arm around Eta. "You okay, Mama?" Eta looked at Tagot being shoved into the back of a federal vehicle. She looked at her son, the warrior who had come home. "I am now, baby," she said. "I am now." But the story didn't end with the arrest. Arrests are just paperwork. Justice, real hard karma, happens in the dark, cold places where the cameras don't go. And for Broady Tagot, the nightmare was just beginning. 6 months later, the trial of United States versus Broady Tagot was the biggest event in the history of the county court. Though because of the federal charges, it was held in Atlanta. The courtroom was packed every single day. Viper had done his job too well. The evidence was insurmountable. The prosecution played the video of the slap in 4K resolution on a massive screen. They played the audio recordings of Tagot using racial slurs. They showed the spreadsheets of the money he had stolen from college students and families passing through town. Tagot's defense lawyer, a cheap suit named Mr. Sterling, tried to argue that Tagot was a victim of deep state overreach and a military coup led by Caleb. The jury didn't buy it. It took them less than 2 hours to deliberate. Guilty. On all counts. Judge Eleanor Brooks, a stern woman known for her zero-tolerance policy on public corruption, looked over her spectacles at Tagot. Tagot had lost weight. His skin was shallow. The arrogance was gone, replaced by a twitchy, hollow-eyed fear. "Mr. Tagot," Judge Brooks said, her voice echoing in the silent room, "you were entrusted with a badge. You used it as a scepter. You bullied the weak. You stole from the innocent. And you assaulted a pillar of your community because your ego was bruised. You are a disgrace to every man and woman who wears a uniform." She paused, letting the weight of the moment settle. "I am sentencing you to 25 years in federal prison, without the possibility of parole. And because of the nature of your crimes, specifically crimes committed against civilians while acting as a law enforcement officer, I am recommending you serve your time at USP Pollock." Tagot's knees buckled. His lawyer had to hold him up. USP Pollock was a high-security penitentiary. It wasn't a club fed for white-collar criminals. It was a hard place. And in prison, there is no lower caste than a dirty cop. The hard karma. 3 weeks later, Tagot was processed into the general population. He wasn't Sheriff Tagot anymore. He was inmate 89402. He walked into the cafeteria holding his tray with trembling hands. He looked for a place to sit. The Aryan Brotherhood turned their backs on him. They didn't like that he had stolen from white locals too. The other gangs stared at him with predatory hunger. He had spent 15 years locking people up, mocking them, beating them. Now he was locked in a cage with them. He sat alone at a table in the corner. A large shadow fell over him. Tagot looked up. Standing there was a massive inmate named Tiny. Tiny was serving life. Tagot recognized him. He had arrested Tiny's younger brother 5 years ago, on a trumped-up charge. A charge that had ruined the kid's life. "You're in my seat, Sheriff," Tiny whispered. It was the exact same line Tagot had used on Eta. Tagot looked around. The cafeteria was full of empty seats. But he knew this wasn't about a seat. "I can move," Tagot stammered, his voice small and pathetic. "Yeah," Tiny said, smiling, revealing a gold tooth. "You can move. But you can't leave. You're in our town now." Tagot scrambled up, spilling his food, grits and lukewarm coffee, all over his jumpsuit. The cafeteria erupted in laughter. It was the same laughter he had heard on Ada's lawn. He retreated to his cell, crying. He would spend the next 25 years looking over his shoulder, living in the same fear he had inflicted on others. The badge couldn't protect him. The uniform couldn't save him. He was finally truly nobody. The rebirth of Oak Haven. Back in Oak Haven, the air was sweeter. With Tagot and his cronies gone, the town council held an emergency election. They needed someone strong, someone fair, someone the community trusted. They asked Caleb to run. Caleb refused. "I'm a soldier," he told them, "not a politician." Instead, they hired an outsider, a woman named Sarah Jenkins, a former Atlanta detective with a spotless record. She fired the remaining corrupt staff and hired a diverse team of deputies. Her first act as sheriff was to formally apologize to Eta Robinson and offer to pay for the damages to her car. Caleb didn't leave, though. He realized his war overseas was done. He had a new mission. He used his savings to open a security consulting firm in the neighboring city, but he kept his base in Oak Haven. He bought the house next door to Ada, tore down the fence, and combined the backyards into a massive garden. Tech stuck around too. He met a local girl who worked at the hardware store, and he ended up opening a gym that offered free self-defense classes to women and the elderly. Viper vanished as quickly as he had arrived, though Ada still received a bouquet of expensive orchids every month, with no return address. The final scene. It was a Tuesday morning 1 year after the slap. Sally's skillet was bustling. The smell of bacon and fresh coffee filled the air. The door chimed. Eta Robinson walked in. She moved a little slower these days, but her head was held high. She wore a new dress, a bright yellow one that looked like sunshine. Jenny, now the manager of the diner, lit up when she saw her. "Morning, Mrs. Robinson. Your table is ready." They walked to the back booth. The same booth. But now there was a small brass plaque screwed into the wall above the table. It read, "Reserved for Eta Robinson, the First Lady of Oak Haven." Ada sat down. Caleb slid into the booth opposite her. He looked different, softer. He wasn't scanning the room for threats anymore. He was just a son, having breakfast with his mother. "Coffee, Mama?" Caleb asked. "Please, baby," Ada smiled. "And maybe a slice of pecan pie." Jenny poured the coffee. It was hot, dark, and perfect. She placed the cup down gently, making sure not a single drop spilled. "Here you go, Ada," Jenny said. "On the house. Forever." Ada took a sip. She looked out the window at the peaceful street. She saw a sheriff's cruiser drive by. Sheriff Jenkins waved at her. Ada waved back. She looked at Caleb. "You know, people say revenge is sweet," Ada mused. Caleb smiled, taking a bite of his toast. "Is it?" Ada took another sip of her coffee and looked at the brass plaque with her name on it. She thought about Tagot rotting in a cell. And she thought about the town that was finally breathing free. "No," Ada said softly. "Revenge is bitter. Justice is what's sweet. And this coffee, this tastes like justice." Caleb laughed, a rich, deep sound that filled the diner. The bell above the door jingled, welcoming another customer into a town that was finally safe. So what's the takeaway here? It's simple. Authority isn't about the badge on your chest. It's about the content of your character. Sheriff Tagot thought he was a god because he had power. But he forgot that power borrowed against the happiness of others always comes due, with interest. He messed with a quiet woman, not realizing that quiet strength is often the most dangerous kind, especially when that strength raised a warrior. If you enjoyed this story of justice served cold, and bullies getting exactly what they deserve, please smash that like button. It really helps Heartline stories grow. Don't forget to share this video with someone who needs a reminder that karma is real. and hit subscribe with the notification bell on so you never miss a new story from Heartline Stories. Thanks for watching, and stay safe out there.